do have a couple minutes and time for a couple questions. For
Rollins, you had a slide up there about tags collected at the Packer.
Yes.
You're retired, thank you.
Yes.
Your confidence in the success rate of that retirement, and they're going to where they're supposed to be going, and that's all going well?
It's going well so far. We've only killed less than 1,000 head. So over time, we'll see what the data, what the metrics show. But so, yes, I'm not concerned about the retirement of the tag numbers. Catching the numbers, our staff is, like I think Justin said it very well, you know, if we end up with 45 to 50,000 head total in the pilot, and Kansas ends up with 55, and if this goes on for a year or two, you know, we're processing 25, 26 million head of fed cattle a year. So we're a drop in the bucket in these pilots. We're going to learn a lot from them, but to capture those animals into a supply chain that comes out on the other end, Tom, to your question, and make sure that we get those tags read, and we didn't waste people's time and money on putting tags in ears. So my point being is our staff is aware of what the ship dates are on those cattle, and they call the packing plants and alert them, and then we remind them again, because this is a very, very small percentage of what they're trying to process every day. Hope I answered your question.
Justin, can you tell us a little bit about using UHF? Are you reading animals that aren't intended to be read? Because I hear that concern come up quite a bit.
I'm assuming you mean by overreading other groups. So, yeah, we've understood, and in fact we've demonstrated in our pilot that you can tone those readers down, and so we actually have readers setting at, well, like I said, one of our livestock markets, it's at their work and shoot, their veterinary shoot. We actually have several readers at different feed yards that are set for their shoot, and they've toned that. I call it toned down. I don't know what but they focused it in to the point where, yes, if you have a tag in your hand as you walk up to put a tag in, yes, it's going to read both tags. But we've actually had them set on a table just like a normal processing situation would be, and they did not read those tags. And so there again, where our readers are at in our livestock markets and our feed yards is kind of a confined region. I think if you put them out in in an alleyway and you happen to read across the set of a couple different alleyways, there is a potential to overread those. But in all honesty, for our purposes, for traceability, we're just looking to see if that animal was at that facility. So it doesn't affect us, but we do have the readers set up at our we actually have, and I failed to say this, but our livestock markets, one of the requirements was for them is to put a reader at either at the exit of their auction block or on their auction block, and then we'll put a reader somewhere else out in the system. That's the other thing we're looking to do, is evaluate where is the best place to put a reader.
Mr. Wilson, in some of the, we talked to everybody, kind of talked a little bit about the confidentiality of the data in a traceback system. In your system, is it fair to say you bought out confidentiality for $5 a tag?
Bought out confidentiality for $5 a tag?
They did not the cooperating feed yards get all the confidential information if they paid for the tag, or did I not understand that right? They got, I mean.
They did, but from a willing supplier, so I'm not sure I see a problem there.
In your, the first two both cooperated with markets. Do you have a cooperating market in
oh,
that?
Yes. Yeah, we had 3 auction markets that were on the working group that are still on our working group, and we have 3 auctions identified that will be participating when we move into the UHF portion of this very much.
And were they concerned about did that ever come up? I mean, data confidentiality came up all the time, and probably the auction markets, well, they certainly, I don't know, they spoke up more loudly than anyone else with that concern.
but they made it loud and clear, and understandably, that's why the only people that can see the data are the two parties in the transaction, because they've agreed to that. And we don't want any stocker operators looking at the customer to the cow-calf, regardless of how that animal is sold. We don't want any stocker operators or feeders going around the auction market or the dealer, broker-dealer, and interrupting that relationship. Yeah, that was talked about a lot during the meetings leading up to the launch of this program. It's a good point.
Any more questions? Oh, Batch.
Wouldn't banks be very interested in this for collateral reasons, for inventories?
Yes.
And I think they'd pay for it.
There's a lot of, as Justin said, there are a lot of management reasons to do this, and you just stated one of them. And there's a lot of merchandise in this country that won't move without some kind of identifier being tied to the collateral, being tied to the loan. Now, I don't know if the beef industry and the cattle industry want to go there, but if they did, I'll hazard a guess. I think Beth had to leave. She had to get back home. I'd hazard a guess that we could minimize, not eliminate, but we could minimize a lot of Eastern livestock deals and other things. If that individual animal ID that was associated with that animal and the merchantability of that animal was affected. Now, there's unintended consequences to that that the industry would have to work through, and I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that those are some conversations that we've had with bankers through the years as we've discussed ID and traceability.
Ross, can I add to that concept?
Please.
I think when we see fraud in the cattle space, one of the common areas we see fraud is an individual has gotten a loan for a set of cattle from multiple bankers, or a loan for cattle that do not exist, ghost cattle. I think that having individual ID would be another tool for a lender to ensure that their collateral is actually there. At times, people have suggested that ID would help clear title. That's a lot more complicated. That would take changes to the Uniform Commercial Code. So kind of two separate issues there, but it could be a potential tool if a lender wanted to use it to make sure that their collateral was unique to them.
And I've been a little surprised that the banking community, they're very interested, but they haven't been a bit more outspoken, to your point. I was under the, maybe somebody knows, anybody here from Canada? So there was some discussion in Canada about connecting those financial dots to ID and traceability, and at one time, I don't know that it ever got off the ground, but the lenders even considering a lower collateral or a lower interest rate requirement. That's a great concept. I don't know if it's been tested. Oh, thank you.
Gene, you made a comment about dual frequency readers and a call for that, and it's my understanding that they would be of great use, but only at very close proximity to the animal because of the limitations of low frequency. Is there anybody on the panel or any of the tag companies or USDA that can speak to the advantages and capabilities of dual frequency readers, and then maybe contrast that to the advantages of a dual frequency tag?
Robert Bailey with Datamars. I would tell you there are dual frequency readers out there. They're just expensive, and like you said, you sacrifice one for the other, the long-term scan versus the close. So it's it's hard to suit both purposes, speed of commerce and that for UHF, for wide alleyway reads versus that close LF, and you can have dual frequency tags. It gets real pricey. And that's not a very popular subject with producers.
And the reason I mean, we went with the livestock market that we're working with, they sell one animal at a time. And he wants to be able to utilize the EID as a service to his customers to be able to go back and do little things and do all his reports for the state and the federal and all of that stuff and do it electronically. So that's why he kind of chose that. His concern at the time was, and I know nothing about high frequency, was that read, that he might read one that he wasn't supposed to read or vice versa. That's probably going to change in the next 2 or 3 years. So,
and that's to your point, and we've said it before. There again, from Kansas's point of view, where we're a receiving state for a lot of different states and a lot of different animals that come in. One of our there again, I use a scenario. If we get a pen of cattle that's got half low frequency and half low frequency, I have to read them at the low frequency range because I have to read them at the lowest common denominator there. And so by having the way we run cattle, whether it be pens of cattle or potloads of cattle through our livestock markets, I can see the dual frequency option being a real plus to us as far as within the same tag. Having the dual frequency within a pen of cattle creates issues.
Okay, any more questions? Yep. Renee, stand by.
Back to the dual frequency tag possibility. It might be, I would like to think, a suggestion to either our technology committee on the cattle traceability working group and tag manufacturers to maybe get a little serious about the expense of what a dual tag might cost, because you've already got a bunch of people that have invested in high frequency and you've got low frequency going on, especially in the dairy business. I mean, they've got it rocking. They're ahead of us in the beef cattle business. And the fact that both of these technologies exist, and sooner or later, just like the way we've watched movies and listened to music, it's inevitable that this technology will continue to change. But I think the important thing is to get something in place. And if we can have some flexibility with a tag that could be read by either reader, and the accuracy depending on that, but to find out the expense of that, to just stop and not go any further with it because it's going to be expensive. Well, how expensive? And how many of those are you going to need? If I send my cattle to the same market, which is the market that is in Gene's study I'm 40 miles away from that market, and for right now, it makes sense for me to put low frequency tags in my cow's ears. But maybe 3 years down the road, the market owner decides high frequency is the rate to go, and the opportunity to have a dual purpose tag during this transition period, because the rest of the world's going to have to transition too. The rest of the world's on low frequency. So I think maybe we should put some more emphasis into discovering what we can.
Can we give a round of applause for our panelists?